Hey, so we're back again with the Dirtywave M8, and today we are going to talk about chops, slices, and all that good stuff that comes with loops on this thing. Like, come on, breakbeats, trackers, really good combination together. So let's have a look at how we can set up our slices and get breakbeats onto this thing, as well as how I sort of talked about in the last video where I created a basic render and slice it up, putting it on this thing, because you do get a lot of power with this with dealing with loops. So enough talking about. Let's get straight into it. Alright, we are back again with the Dirtywave M8, and today we are looking at chops and slicing. So we're going to take the sampler and create some breakbeats and some other interesting ways we can use the slice features to get the most out of this device. So if you enjoy like liquid drum and bass or any of those genres, this is something that's going to help you out. So what we're going to do is jump in and just create something new. So create a chain, create our phrase, give it a new instrument, and we're going to come across to our sampler here. And what I usually like doing is like with loops or anything I prepared on the door, or maybe I've created a rhythmic element on here, rendered it out, and then what I can do is bring it back in there and use it as slices. So I touched a little bit on this in the chords and texture video, but we're going to have a bit more of a look around. And what I've done is I've gone through and grabbed a whole bunch of these breakbeats, because slicing, breakbeats, it goes hand in hand. But I'm just going to bring one of these in, and then we can start tinkering with it using our edit over here. So as we can hear, so we have that full drum break, but usually I only work with like 1 bar of audio. So just to that drum there. So what I'm going to do is use this one, bring it all the way back. There are different drum beats that you get if you use different parts of a breakbeat, or if you use the full one. It can be a little bit chaotic, so I just like working in one. And then you can use up and down to move in big chunks, but because I'm trying to dial in that drum, I can just bring it in just before that kick happens. So I might just go somewhere there. And then what I can do is come down and go crop. And then we've got the breakbeat lined up. So we can come in here and manually adjust our slice point. So I'll make that a little bit bigger, so you can see that we got 2 slice points there. Sometimes that's a little bit annoying, so we can use some of the destructive edits. So just knowing that these will change the sound, and that's why we have the lovely little undo there, because that's going to cause problems if we destroy a sound and then it doesn't go anywhere. So before I do any destructive stuff, I'm just going to change the name. So I'm going to go Bobby Ants. I'll make this 16, so I know it's a 16 step sequence, or 1 bar a loop. So I'm just going to save that in the same folder. So I'm not any way, shape or form touching that original sample, but everything I do in here, I can bring it back later on. Like the sample holds on to these slice marks. So what I can do, instead of manually adjusting things, and like we do have a variety of different ways that we can edit our sound, but what I want to do is come over to the slice. We can have a crazy amount of slices in this thing. So what we want to do is pick 8 and just fast tap that. And if we come in here, we can listen to the individual parts. Cool. So we have our slice, and there are some other things that you can do in this space, like you can normalize the audio if it's a little bit too low. You can cut parts out, you can reverse parts of samples, but we can look at that in the tracker mode. Yeah, and there's a variety of things that really help out. So if you've got a real clicky part, you can just like say I want to fix that clickiness, I can just get that last little bit and then cause a fade out. So that last point will be 0. This first point will be fade in. So other way, fade in, fade out. So there are some nice tools in here when you're editing a sample, but usually what happens is I'll crop it. If it's too silent and I want to normalize it, I'll normalize it. If I got those fade in and outs, I'll just do that, and that would be the finishing touch. And if it's for slicing like I've done here, I'll slice it. So that's usually my process for doing that. I'm just going to overwrite that last save, and then we can hit opt out of that menu, and then we have our slices set up. But it's not ready to play yet. What we need to do is turn on the slice to file. So if I come back into this menu here, and then I can just create a bunch of C commands, or I can be lazy like I showed in the, there we go, in the other video. So just that one around using the tools in the melody or the drum beat. And then what I want to do is come down to here and use the slice, which I believe lives right there. So slices. So it's not going to play for anything that doesn't have a slice because we're not telling the file which one we want to play. So we can come in here and do the same thing. So no, it's not going to let me do that, but I can just quickly plot some in. Cool, so we have our breakbeat going, but it's not really syncing to our sound. And there's a few different ways to do that. With that Bobby beat, I know that was a 130. So one way we can do it is through tempo. So we can come all the way back to the start and we can change our project temp to 130. And that's going to sync up the audio. But let's say I wanted to make something faster. Like that's a particular style, you can keep it like that. But what happens like if I go down, we're getting all those drops. So how do we make the mate align that sound a little bit better? So I'm just going to take that up to 150, 155, because I like that for my breakbeat stuff. But what I can do is come back into here, come down to the play mode, and there's a few ones that we get to play with. So when you're dealing with repitch, what you want to try and do is align that step. So if you just tap around, you can see phrases and steps, because I know this breakbeat, because it's 16 steps, it's going to fit into one phrase. I just want to make sure that it's one with 0 steps. And no matter how I move that tempo, so if I come back up here, it's always going to be aligned. Now there's a few different options of repitch. So we got reverse, we've got ping pong, so it bounces back and forward, and we got repitch with BPM. So this one we can align it to our BPM to get the sound that we want. So we've got our slice instrument all set up, and I think this is a good point to leave it alone because we've got our little pattern, and this is where I think it's really cool to start playing this up. There's a few tools in here that can just make break beats and slicing so much easier to work with. But let's say we want to turn this into a completely different drum kit instead of just playing this loop verbatim, and this is where we can come in and start playing with the slices. So one thing I like to do is just selecting groups and then moving them back and forward. So what I might do is do something like that, maybe move this one forward. And that's just completely changed up a loop, and you can set these up, and there's a curlew outside. And then other things too is we can do repeats, because these always work well with any sort of breakbeat. So, and then we can add another one down here for some flavor. That sounds pretty cool. Maybe we add some off commands in here by pressing Option and Edit, and then we can. Now, before I move on, you probably thought, well, what happens? I just wanted to put a note there and play the sample. And the reason why I showed the slice method is just to show how it's working by it's bouncing around different samples. But what you can do, and I'll probably show this first, come all the way down to C1. And all your slices are that way, so you get the full 8 tracks. But there are just some nice things that you can do when you have slices exposed like that to adjust them with random and chance. So from my original drum break, I've just moved these across here because I think we can add some little bit of randomness, because we can like continually keep playing this pattern and change things up. But if we start adding random commands to our breakbeat, we can sort of leave them sort of generative in the background as things are moving on. You don't want to do this on every note, but adding a few random chances. So I think they are that one. Randomize the value on the last effect. No, I want the other random on the left. So I can do that. Just adding a few different elements throughout here, like you can turn a basic breakbeat and then really mangle it up. And this goes with any sort of loop. Like this could be a melody loop, like I'm currently dealing with drums right now. But I think this is a really good idea of like, if you're working in loops with trackers, like you're not just limited like back in the day, smaller file size, you try and do some tricky things, but these can hold on to quite a lot of memory. So don't feel that you can't bring loops into here and really start mangling up like that, whether you're just cutting them into chord blocks or that you can start using the tracker effects to loop and bend and change the sound however you want. So we've got a pattern. Let's have a look at some of the other tools that we got access to. So there is a few in here for like loop points and that, but because we're dealing with repitch, you can use like the ping pongs and that, which work more with slices with melody than is for drums. We'll talk about that in a little bit later. We can degrade the sound, so it just adds a different flavor. We can add a filter, and I'm going to add this now because what I'm going to do is use this as a texture element. And I'm just going to throw some drums underneath. So I'm just going to put a high pass, drop it down to about there. And it's just going to move that like third off the drum. So we can put that in a little bit later. So we're layering some drums. And we'll maybe give it a little bit of a crunch as well. So I'll probably bring that up and then bring that one down. So that's our volume control. And just makes it hit a little bit harder, a bit more of a sausage. So what we can come back to is we come back out here. I'm just going to quickly pick a drum sample. So I just want to select everything here and then, whoops, went a little bit too over the top. And then we'll set that to a drum. And yeah, so sample, and then we go load, and then we can come back to other samples because I want some drums. We can pick a hit. Pick the 909. I like that one. And I don't think that's right. What I might do is just remove that one, bring that down there. Cool. And then we come back to here. Cool. And that is just something that brings a lot of texture in here. Like you could have some chords going. What we could do is bring that loop that we made in the chords and texture episode. So I'm just going to come back in here. So, and we'll create that. And then we are going to load a sample. Now you could save that instrument off. Like if you made chords and like this breakbeat, I could save that out. So what I might do is I'm just coming up to the renders, that one, yes. Now if we go back to edit, we can see those sample slices have carried across from the previous video into that one. So this is a really good idea. If you've come across samples that you really enjoy using, where it's a breakbeat in that, spend the time to prep them, because if you have an idea, it can sap the creative workflow if you're doing this technical stuff. But if you prepared a whole bunch of breakbeats with like all the slices and that, and I'm working on a nice little pack for the M8, but it just makes it so much quicker to try things, get things in, and then start experimenting and working along. So I'm just going to get out of that, and we can do the same thing. I'm just going to set this up real quickly. And no, I don't need to repitch it because I'm just going to play them like samples. But what I might do is, because it's a little bit abrasive being a chippy dippy tune, I'm going to create a little bit of stuff, and I'll come back in a second and explain it. So I've done a little mucking around, and really what I wanted to do was change up that original sample, which is quite bright and buzzy, bring it back a little bit because it is chiptune. It can get a little bit abrasive, but with this one, what I've done was put a LFO to create sort of a plucky, like triplet art thingy. So I routed that into the low pass, had it drop right down a little bit, and did some sweet little tinkerings here and there to get that plucky sound. But because we've got that as a slice, we can start changing things up. Now with some of these slices, it's a bit hard to manipulate the pitch, so I've just got that playing per verbatim, but I'm also having that re-trigger every time I start the sample, so I'm getting that pluckiness, and then I can create like a full sequence, bringing all that stuff together. And then in the context of going a little bit above and beyond, and that just demonstrates what you can do with slices and bringing a lot into this device. So in the end, I hope this has given you a little bit of inspiration to not shy away bringing loops onto this device. It can do quite a lot with them, and there is so much to be had, especially with the M8 and the tracker workflow, doing slices and mangling it up, re-sampling, re-rendering and trying it back on the machine. You're going to have a good time. So if you did enjoy this one, you think it's going to help someone else out, definitely give it the thumbs up. Someone that's probably got a mate and trying to learn it. And this is part of a series that I'm working on to go from a very beginner friendly, this is the mate, to getting a song out there and getting the most out of this machine. So if you did like that one and you want to see more, I hope to see you next time.